solving problems with the inverse square law. We've spent a good amount of time taking a look at the inverse square law. So now let's do a little bit of problem solving in the studio. These are practical problems that I run into all of the time, and actually inverse square law is playing a role in my problem solving and the solutions I come up with to make beautiful photos. Scenario number 1. I only have one light to light a group, but some people in the group are lit more brightly than others. What can I do to fix this problem? Now it's time for a little problem solving. So I'm going to create an image here. We're going to analyze the problems that exist and then take a look at what we can do to fix it. All right. Lovely ladies, strike a pose, look gorgeous. Okay. So I'm going to review this shot, and here's what I see. Taking a look, the person closest to the light is by far the brightest. As you move across the frame away from the light, subject is much dimmer, so the intensity falls off. But we already know that light does that because of the inverse square law. And then also, because light's shaped like a cone and the inverse square law, my subject on the floor isn't really getting any light. The other thing, that this isn't exactly related to inverse square law, but because of the relative distance, my subject sitting on the floor also has really angular light. It's not the same direction of light because she's sitting below, so it's coming from above. What can we do to even out the light overall? One way that I can help even out the light is by pulling it away from the group. When I pull it away from the group, because of the inverse square law, everybody will be more evenly lit. Right now, one person is closer to the light than everyone else. So of course, they're going to be brighter. So I'm going to pull the light back just a little bit and see how this helps the scene. All right, let's pull the light back to about here. Of course, when I take this photo, it's dimmer because I pulled the light away. In this case, I was going to open up my aperture, but I don't want to go too far open because it's a group shot. I want to make sure everyone's in focus. More or less, they're on the same plane, but the people in the back are a couple feet behind the person in the front. So I don't think I would go any narrower depth of field than f8. So I'm at f8. We'll see if that looks okay. Okay, that's looking much, much better. So the person on the right is still a little bit brighter. She's also more pale than everyone else. But the center of the light is actually pointed in the center of the group. I can angle it a little bit more across the group because notice now the person on the right isn't that much closer. Basically everyone's similar distance from the light. So let me see if that helps it at all. Just that little angling across the group. So it makes it much more even. Now at the same time, I didn't change the height of the light, nor did I change the height of the person on the floor. But if you look at it, the light on her face is much more even. The reason for this is when I backed up the light, the relative angles, it kind of evens out. It's not like it's right above her head, so it's pointed straight down. When you back it up, the light spreads out, so it's not bad light on her face anymore. It looks much better. The biggest problems that I see in this particular example is that when I back the light up too far, it'll start to get hard. It won't be soft light anymore. So we know that the smaller the light source is relative to the subject, like it gets smaller when you back it up, the harder the light. So if I have the option, instead of using the 3-foot octabox that I have here, or for example, a small umbrella, I would move to a larger light source, a larger modifier. So I would maybe go from a small umbrella to a large or extra large umbrella, or I'd go from a 3-foot octabox to a 5-foot octabox. The kind of things that you'll be struggling with all depends on the size of your space, because there may be only so far that you can back up your light and only so big of a modifier. So those are the types of things you're doing to problem solve when you're shooting in a really small studio. I'm going to take one more photo when I've switched to the 5-foot octabox so you can see how it's gotten just a little bit wider spread of light. So it's going to more evenly light the group. And then also because it's a bigger light source, it's going to be a bit softer. I've switched over to my 5-foot octabox to give me a more even spread of light. Also because it's further back, it'll give me the softer light. And then I feathered it across my group so everybody's getting a similar amount of illumination. So let's see how it looks. In this shot, you can see the light on the face has gotten a little bit softer and overall in the group, it's a little bit more even. If you are shooting like this and it still looks uneven, the very last thing that I would try is compressing the group. So I'm going to move you all in closer together, if you will, because now there's not so much distance between them. And then if the subject on the floor is still a little bit dark, I'm going to raise her up a bit and put her in a chair. All of this evens out because when people are further apart, either height or in depth, all of that changes the way the light falls on them. Okay, and I'm going to just scoot you all just a tiny bit this way. Good. Now I'll take one full length shot so they can see. Do one close-up shot. Great. So now everybody is just a little bit more evenly lit. If I need to, I can pull the light even further away. It'll even out even more. The closer I bring it, the more it'll exaggerate the distances between them. Let's take a look at another lighting problem. We'll analyze it together and figure out what we need to do to improve the lighting. Okay, let's see. Okay, where does your eye go in the frame? I always ask myself that when I'm looking at a photograph, and one of the places your eye goes is the brightest part in the photo. For this photo, I think it's her foot, right? The brightest part is kind of right in that pool of light around her foot. So I'm looking at her feet, and then of course, on the other side of her body, it fades to shadow. Her eyes aren't really the attention of the frame. So what can we do to fix it? What are our solutions? I mean, one thing I could do is I could change her pose, right? I could have her feet not come straight out towards the light. I could maybe rotate her the other direction, because then if she rotates the other direction, her face is the closest thing to the light, so it will be the brightest. But let's say I like this pose. I don't want to change the pose. What do I do to change the light? As you know, when a light is in close to the subject, the thing that's closest is brightest, and when it's very close, fall off of light is exaggerated. So when you double the distance from the light to her foot, you quarter the power, you lose 75% of the power. So by the time I double the distance from the light to her foot, from her foot to her face, I'm already losing a massive amount of light. So what I can do is I can back the light up. When I back the light up, I try to put it so that the light is at a similar distance from both her foot and her face. And then when it's further back, the light falls off more gradually. So it'll give me more even illumination on my subject. So let me move this light back. Move it back this direction. So now it'll point it back towards my subject. Everything should be much more even. I backed it up, so I need to either turn up the power of the light or open up my aperture. I'm going to open up my aperture a bit. Great. And so now, yeah, the foot is a little bit brighter, but overall, the exposure is much more even on my subject. If you've got more room to go, more space that you can move, I'd move that light back even further. And then if you need to, you can grab an even bigger modifier.